The diamond chandelier above me scattered light like frozen tears across the ballroom floor. I pressed my back against a marble column, my heart hammering so hard I was certain the pearls at my throat were trembling with each beat. 300 of Manhattan's elite surrounded me, draped in designer gowns and false smiles, completely oblivious to the predator hunting through their midst. To them, this was just another charity gala. Another excuse to flaunt wealth and make connections. To me, it was a trap I'd walked into with my eyes wide open. "There you are, Isabel." Victor's voice slithered across my skin like ice water. I turned to find him emerging from the crowd, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his tuxedo immaculate, his smile revealing too many teeth. He looked like everyone's favorite grandfather. He was anything but Victor. I kept my voice steady, years of modeling having taught me to control my expressions even when terror clawed at my insides. "I didn't realize you'd be attending tonight." "Didn't you?" He moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive that now made my stomach turn. "I thought perhaps that's why you chose to come. To finally give me your answer." "My answer?" As if there was any question about what I would say to his obscene proposal. 3 weeks ago, Victor Ashford had sat across from me in my father's old study, surrounded by the ghosts of a man I'd barely known, and informed me that I would marry him. Not asked. Informed. As if I were a business acquisition rather than a human being. My father's will, it seemed, had contained provisions I'd never known about. Provisions that gave Victor control of my inheritance unless I married before my 27th birthday. And Victor, ever the opportunist, had decided that if he couldn't have my father's money through business, he would have it through me. "I've given you my answer," I said quietly. "Multiple times." "It's no." Something flickered behind his pale blue eyes. Something that made every instinct I possessed scream danger. "I was hoping time might have changed your perspective. Perhaps helped you understand the precariousness of your situation." "Is that a threat?" "Merely an observation." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. I forced myself not to flinch. "You're alone in the world, Isabel. No family, no real friends, no resources since I've had your accounts frozen pending the estate settlement. How long do you think you can survive on stubbornness alone?" The frozen accounts. Another of his power plays. My lawyer was fighting it, but Victor had connections everywhere. Judges, bankers, politicians. Everyone owed him something. "I'd rather starve than marry you." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. "Dead." "That can be arranged." He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "One way or another, you will be my wife. The only question is whether you walk down the aisle willingly or whether I have to persuade you." Fear turned my blood to ice. I knew what his persuasion looked like. I'd seen the bruises on his last wife before she'd conveniently fallen down the stairs. Before her death had been ruled an accident despite the whispers that followed Victor like shadows. "Excuse me." I tried to step around him, but his hand clamped around my wrist with bruising force. "We're not finished." "Yes, we are." I yanked my arm, but his grip only tightened. "I've been patient, Isabel. More patient than you deserve. But my patience is running out." His voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. "You have until midnight to reconsider. After that, I'll take more direct measures. And trust me, my dear, you won't enjoy them." He released me so suddenly I stumbled, nearly losing my balance on my stiletto heels. By the time I steadied myself, he had melted back into the crowd, leaving only the ghost of his threat lingering in the air. I had to get out. Had to find somewhere safe, someone who could help me. But as I scanned the ballroom, I realized with sinking despair that Victor's men were everywhere. I recognized at least 4 of them stationed at various exits, their eyes tracking my movements like wolves watching wounded prey trapped. I was completely trapped. My feet carried me deeper into the crowd, instinct driving me to put distance between myself and Victor's watchful guards. I needed to think, needed to find an escape route, I collided with something solid. Someone solid. Careful. A hand caught my elbow, steadying me before I could fall. The voice was deep, accented with something Mediterranean, and utterly devoid of warmth. I looked up and up into a face that seemed carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes the color of aged whiskey. Dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and a scar bisected one eyebrow, the only imperfection on an otherwise devastatingly handsome face. He wore his tuxedo like armor, the fabric straining slightly across shoulders that spoke of physical power carefully contained. Everything about him radiated danger, from the cold assessment in his eyes to the predatory stillness of his posture. I knew who he was. Everyone in this room knew who he was, Dante Salvatore, the most dangerous man in New York. "I'm so sorry," I breathed, trying to step back. His hand remained on my elbow, not restraining but not releasing either. "You're running from someone. Not a question." His eyes had already moved past me, scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. "The silver-haired man who was just speaking with you." The denial died on my lips. What was the point? "Yes, Victor Ashford." He said the name like it tasted bitter. "Interesting company you keep." Not by choice. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, perhaps. Or calculation. With a man like Dante Salvatore, they were probably the same thing. "He has men at all the exits," I found myself saying, desperation making me reckless. "I can't leave without them seeing me." "And what happens if they see you?" I thought about Victor's threat, about his last wife's convenient accident, about the midnight deadline ticking away like a bomb. Nothing good. Dante studied me for a long moment, those whiskey eyes revealing nothing. I felt like a butterfly pinned beneath glass, every flaw and weakness exposed to his scrutiny. Then he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I have a proposition for you." "I'm not interested in propositions from men I don't know." "You know exactly who I am." He tilted his head slightly. "And right now, I'm your only option. Unless you'd prefer to take your chances with Ashford's men." He was right. I hated that he was right. What kind of proposition? "Dance with me." He held out his hand. "Play along with whatever I say for the next 10 minutes. In return, I'll ensure you leave this gala safely without Ashford or his men following." That's it. Just dancing. For now. Qualifier sent warning bells clanging through my skull. But Victor's deadline loomed, and the alternative was unthinkable. Fine. I placed my hand in his, feeling the heat of his palm against my suddenly cold fingers. 10 minutes. He led me onto the dance floor just as the orchestra struck up a waltz. His arm encircled my waist, drawing me closer than propriety allowed, close enough that I could feel the hard planes of his chest against my body. "Smile," he murmured against my ear. "You're supposed to be enjoying yourself." Hard to enjoy myself when I'm dancing with a known criminal. His chest vibrated with what might have been a laugh. Known, perhaps. Convicted, never. There's a difference. Semantics. The only kind that matter in my world. He spun me expertly, and I caught a glimpse of Victor watching us from across the room, his face twisted with barely concealed rage. "Your friend doesn't seem pleased." "He's not my friend." "No? What is he then?" "A nightmare." The word escaped before I could stop it. Dante's arm tightened fractionally around my waist. "Tell me." I shouldn't. I barely knew this man, and what I did know should have terrified me more than Victor ever could. But something about the solid warmth of his body, the controlled strength in his movements, made me feel safer than I had in weeks. He wants to marry me. Force me to marry him, actually. Something about my father's will. Some clause that gives him control of my inheritance if I don't marry before my 27th birthday. I laughed bitterly. Which happens to be in 3 weeks. And if you don't comply? He's made it clear he'll find other ways to persuade me. I met Dante's eyes. His last wife died under mysterious circumstances. I don't intend to be his next victim. The music swelled around us, but I barely heard it. Dante's expression had shifted, something cold and dangerous surfacing behind his carefully controlled features. Victor Ashford is a parasite, he said quietly. He's been a thorn in my side for years. His legitimate businesses are fronts for money laundering, and his political connections have protected him from consequences he richly deserves. So you're not friends. We're enemies. He said it simply, without drama. And it occurs to me that the enemy of my enemy could be a very valuable ally. Before I could ask what he meant, Victor appeared at the edge of the dance floor, his smile sharp as a knife. Mind if I cut in, Salvatore? This lovely lady and I have unfinished business. Dante stopped dancing but didn't release me. His arm remained firmly around my waist, his body angled slightly in front of mine. Protective. Possessive. Actually, I do mind. His voice was pleasant, but his eyes held murder. I don't appreciate other men trying to claim what's mine. Victor's smile faltered. Yours? I wasn't aware you and Miss Thornton were acquainted. The words came out of my mouth before I could think, driven by desperation and the primal need to escape Victor's clutches by any means necessary. We're more than acquainted, Victor. I pressed closer to Dante, praying he would play along. We're engaged. Silence. Victor's face went through a rapid series of expressions, shock, disbelief, rage, before settling into something that looked almost like fear as his eyes moved to Dante. Engaged, he repeated flatly. Yes. Dante's arm tightened around me, and I felt his lips brush my temple in a gesture so naturally intimate it sent shivers down my spine. Isabel and I have been keeping our relationship private, but I suppose the secret is out now. He smiled at Victor, and there was nothing pleasant about it. You can understand my reluctance to share what's mine. Victor's jaw worked silently for a moment. I could see him calculating, weighing the risks of challenging Dante Salvatore against his desire to possess me. Self-preservation one. I see. He took a step back, his hands raised in mock surrender. My apologies for the confusion. I wasn't aware of your arrangement. His eyes found mine, and the promise in them made my blood run cold. We'll speak again soon, Isabel. When you're not otherwise occupied. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. The moment he was out of sight, I tried to step away from Dante, but his grip held firm. Not yet, he murmured. His men are still watching. We need to make this convincing. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. The engagement thing, I mean. I panicked, and you did exactly what I was hoping you'd do. He guided me off the dance floor, his hand now at the small of my back, steering me toward a private alcove. You gave me the perfect opportunity. Opportunity for what? He stopped, turning me to face him. In the shadows of the alcove, his features seemed sharper, more predatory. The civilized veneer of the ballroom had fallen away, revealing the dangerous man beneath. To make Victor Ashford very, very nervous. His fingers caught my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. And to acquire something I've wanted for quite some time. What's that? He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes, making them glitter with dark amusement. A wife. A wife. I repeated the word slowly, certain I'd misheard. You want a wife? I need one, actually. For reasons that don't concern you. Dante released my chin but didn't step back, his body still close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. And you need a husband. One powerful enough to keep Victor Ashford from forcing you into anything. My mind raced, trying to find the trap in his words. There was always a trap with men like him. So you're proposing we get married. For real. I'm proposing we continue the charade you started. His eyes held mine, unblinking. A fake engagement followed by a fake marriage if necessary. Long enough to satisfy the terms of your father's will and neutralize Victor's claim on your inheritance. And what do you get out of it? That's my concern. If you expect me to agree to this, it becomes my concern too. Something like respect flickered across his features. Fair enough. He glanced toward the ballroom, ensuring we weren't being observed, before continuing. There are certain business arrangements that would benefit from the appearance of stability. A wife suggests permanence, legitimacy. It opens doors that remain closed to unmarried men in my position. You mean it makes you look less like a crime lord? I mean it makes me look like a businessman with a beautiful wife and conventional aspirations. His smile was razor thin. Perception is everything in my world, Miss Thornton. I should have said no. Should have thanked him for his help with Victor and walked away. But walk away to what? My accounts were frozen. My apartment was being watched. Victor had made it clear he wouldn't stop until he had me. What would this arrangement entail exactly? You would live in my home, tend events at my side, play the role of devoted fiancé and eventually wife whenever we're in public. He ticked off the terms like items on a business proposal. In private, you would have your own quarters, your own space. I have no interest in forcing intimacy where it isn't wanted. How reassuring. I'm not Victor Ashford. The words came out sharp, edged with something that might have been offense. I don't need to coerce women into my bed. The implication hung between us. I felt heat rise to my cheeks despite myself. And when it's over, when I have my inheritance and you have your legitimacy, quiet divorce, irreconcilable differences. You walk away with your fortune and your freedom, and I continue with my business interests. He shrugged, the gesture elegant despite his size. A clean arrangement. No complications. No complications. As if anything involving Dante Salvatore could ever be uncomplicated. I need time to think. You have until we leave this building. His hand found the small of my back again, guiding me toward a service corridor. Victor's men are still watching. If you leave alone, they'll follow. If you leave with me as my fiancé, they won't dare touch you. He was right. I hated that he was right. We walked in silence through the corridor, past confused servers and startled security guards who took one look at Dante and immediately stepped aside. His reputation preceded him like a physical force. A black car waited at the service entrance, engine running, a mountain of a man in a dark suit holding the door open. Nico, this is Isabel Thornton. Dante helped me into the car with unexpected gentleness. My fiancé. Nico's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight widening of his eyes before he nodded. Ma'am. Dante slid in beside me, and the door closed, sealing us in leather-scented darkness. The car pulled away smoothly, and I watched the gala disappear through the tinted windows, taking with it the last remnants of my old life. Yes. Dante turned to look at me. Yes. Yes, I'll do it. The fake engagement, the marriage, all of it. I met his eyes, refusing to show the terror coursing through my veins. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I want everything in writing. A contract spelling out exactly what's expected of both of us and what happens when it ends. Reasonable. Second, I want access to my own money. Not yours, mine. Whatever you need to do to unfreeze my accounts. Already in progress. My lawyers will have Victor's injunction overturned by morning. I blinked, surprised by his efficiency. Third, I want to know what I'm getting into. Your business, your enemies, anything that might put me at risk. I won't walk blindly into danger. For the first time, Dante hesitated. Some knowledge carries its own dangers. So does ignorance. I'd rather know what I'm facing. He studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A frightened socialite looking for a white knight. His lips curved slightly. Instead, I find a woman who negotiates terms with a crime lord as if she's closing a business deal. I learned from the best. Bitterness crept into my voice. My father may have been absent, but he taught me one thing: never enter an agreement without knowing exactly what you're trading. Your father was Thomas Thornton. Not a question. I knew him. By reputation, at least. Everyone knew him by reputation. Very few knew him at all. I turned to look out the window, watching the city lights blur past. He was more interested in building his empire than raising his daughter. I was an inconvenience, a responsibility he outsourced to nannies and boarding schools. And yet Victor Ashford wants you badly enough to freeze your assets and threaten your life. Dante's voice was thoughtful. There's more to this inheritance than money. If there is, I don't know about it. My father and I barely spoke. When he died 6 months ago, I thought I'd finally be free of his shadow. I laughed humorlessly. Instead, I discovered his shadow had a name: Victor Ashford. Car slowed, turning onto a street I didn't recognize. Ahead, a glass tower rose into the night sky, its upper floors glowing with warm light against the darkness. "We're here." Dante stepped out as Nico opened the door, then extended his hand to help me. "Welcome to your new home, Miss Thornton." Penthouse occupied the entire top floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required both a key card and a biometric scan. As the doors opened, I found myself stepping into a space that seemed designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan's skyline. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and dark leather. Art that I recognized as priceless hung on walls painted in shades of charcoal and cream. Tea was beautiful. It was also cold. Impersonal. A showroom rather than a home. "Your quarters are in the East Wing." Dante shrugged off his tuxedo jacket, draping it over a chair with casual disregard for its cost. "Mrs. Russo will show you in the morning. For tonight, the guest suite should suffice." "Mrs. Russo?" "My housekeeper. She's been with my family since before I was born." Something softened in his voice so briefly I almost missed it. "She'll take care of anything you need." I stood in the middle of the vast living room, suddenly aware of how ridiculous I must look. A woman in a borrowed gown, clutching a beaded purse that contained nothing but lipstick and a dead phone, pretending she belonged in this world of wealth and danger. I don't have anything. The admission cost me more than I wanted to admit. Clothes, toiletries, anything. Victor had my apartment watched. I've been living out of hotel rooms for weeks. I'll have someone collect your things tomorrow. In the meantime, the guest suite is fully stocked. Dante moved toward a hallway leading deeper into the penthouse. "Get some sleep, Miss Thornton. Tomorrow we begin making our engagement public. You'll need your strength. Isabel." He paused, looking back over his shoulder. "If we're going to convince people we're in love, you should probably call me by my first name." I lifted my chin, refusing to be cowed by his intimidating presence. "Or Belle. That's what people who actually know me call me." Something unreadable crossed his face. "Belle." He tested the name, and I tried not to notice how it sounded different in his accented voice. Softer. Almost intimate. "Then you should call me Dante." "Dante." I nodded. "Good night." "Good night, Belle." He disappeared down the hallway, and I was left alone in his vast, cold penthouse, wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. Sleep came in fitful bursts, my dreams haunted by Victor's threats and Dante's predatory smile. When dawn finally broke over Manhattan, painting the skyline in shades of pink and gold, I gave up pretending and dragged myself to the window. The view was breathtaking. From this height, the city looked almost peaceful. Cars moved like ants through the streets below. Steam rose from subway grates. The first joggers appeared in Central Park, tiny figures following familiar paths. A normal world, going about its normal business, completely unaware of the abnormal bargain I'd struck in the darkness. "You're awake early." I spun to find a woman watching me from the doorway. She was small and round, with silver hair pinned back in a neat bun and eyes that sparkled with keen intelligence. Her apron was spotless, her manner warm but assessing. Mrs. Russo? The same. She moved into the room with the comfortable authority of someone who'd been running this household for decades. Mr. Dante mentioned we'd have a guest. He didn't mention she'd be quite so lovely. Thank you. I think. Mrs. Russo's smile widened. He also mentioned you'd be staying for quite some time. As his fiancé. There was a question buried in her statement. I chose to answer it directly. It's complicated. With Mr. Dante, everything is complicated. She gestured toward the door. Come. I'll show you to your proper quarters, and then we'll see about getting you some breakfast. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. She wasn't wrong. Between Victor's harassment and living out of hotels, eating had become an afterthought. Why new quarters turned out to be an entire wing of the penthouse. A bedroom larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft blues and creams that felt almost welcoming after the stark masculinity of the main living areas. An ensuite bathroom with a tub I could swim in. A private sitting room with a fireplace and built-in bookshelves. Mr. Dante had this wing redecorated last night, Mrs. Russo mentioned casually. Said his fiancé should have something more suitable than the guest room. I stared at her. Last night? But it's only been. Money moves quickly when there's enough of it. Her eyes twinkled. He also had a personal shopper deliver a wardrobe. Everything should be in your size. If anything doesn't fit, we'll have it altered. I opened the closet and felt my jaw drop. Rows of designer clothing hung in perfect organization. Casual wear, business attire, evening gowns. Shoes in every style lined the floor. A jewelry case sat on the center island, containing pieces that probably cost more than my frozen inheritance. This is too much, I whispered. It's exactly enough. Mrs. Russo's voice was gentle but firm. You're to be Mrs. Salvatore, at least in the eyes of the world. You need to look the part. Mrs. Salvatore. The name sent a strange shiver down my spine. I'll leave you to freshen up, Mrs. Russo continued. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes. Mr. Dante is expecting you in his study afterward to discuss arrangements. She left me alone with my new wardrobe and my racing thoughts. I showered quickly, the hot water washing away some of the tension knotted in my muscles. By the time I dressed in a cashmere sweater and perfectly fitted trousers, I almost felt like myself again. Almost. Dante was waiting in his study, seated behind a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. Nico stood by the door, a silent sentinel. And spread across the desk was a document thick enough to be a novel. Our contract. Dante gestured to the chair across from him. I suggest you read it carefully before signing. I settled into the chair and began to read. The terms were exactly as he'd described. A marriage of convenience, lasting a minimum of 1 year. Separate bedrooms. Public appearances together as needed. Access to household accounts for personal expenses. And a generous settlement upon divorce, regardless of the circumstances. But it was the final clause that made my breath catch. In the event of genuine romantic attachment, I read aloud, both parties agree to renegotiate terms in good faith. Dante's expression remained neutral. A standard precaution. These arrangements occasionally become complicated. Do they? So I'm told. His eyes met mine, and I could have sworn I saw something flicker in their depths. I've never been married before. Fake or otherwise. Neither have I. Then we'll figure it out together. He slid a pen across the desk. Do we have an agreement? I looked at the contract. At the man who'd offered me an escape from one nightmare, even if it meant entering another. At the future I was signing away in exchange for survival. I picked up the pen. We have an agreement. My signature joined his at the bottom of the page, and just like that I became Dante Salvatore's fake fiancé. The act had begun. What neither of us realized was just how convincing it would become. The first week of my fake engagement passed in a blur of public appearances and private silences. Dante was a master of performance, his hand finding the small of my back at exactly the right moment, his lips brushing my temple when cameras appeared, his voice warm with affection that vanished the instant we were alone. I learned to match his rhythm, to lean into his touch as if it were natural, to smile at him with eyes that suggested intimacy we'd never shared. We were actors in a play neither of us had written, performing for an audience that included everyone from society columnists to federal investigators. The press went wild, of course. Dante Salvatore, New York's most eligible and most dangerous bachelor, suddenly engaged to the reclusive daughter of Thomas Thornton. The headlines ranged from breathless romance to suspicious speculation. Salvatore sweeps socialite off her feet. Thornton heiress finds love and unlikely heiress Bua and the Beast. Inside the whirlwind romance, I read them all, marveling at how easily fiction became accepted truth. A few staged photos, a handful of public appearances, and suddenly the world believed we were madly in love. Victor, predictably, was not among the believers. He's called 17 times today. Nico appeared in the doorway of the sitting room where I'd been attempting to read. My men intercepted him twice trying to get into the building. What did you tell him? That Mr. Salvatore doesn't appreciate uninvited guests. Nico's expression remained impassive. He left a message. Said to tell you he knows what you're doing and it won't work. A chill ran down my spine despite the fire crackling in the hearth. Does Dante know? Mr. Salvatore is aware of all threats to his household. Nico's eyes met mine, and I saw something almost like reassurance in their depths. You're safe here, Miss Thornton. No one gets past our security. After he left, I abandoned my book and moved to the window. The city sprawled below, indifferent to my fears. Somewhere out there, Victor was plotting, planning, waiting for an opportunity to strike. I was still standing there when Dante found me an hour later. You're worried. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body. About Ashford. Shouldn't I be? Perhaps. He was silent for a moment, studying the skyline. But worry accomplishes nothing. Action does. What kind of action? I've been doing some research into your father's will. Clause Victor is exploiting its unusual, specific in ways that suggest it was added later, possibly without your father's full knowledge. I turned to look at him. You think Victor forged it? I think Victor is capable of far worse than forgery. Dante's jaw tightened. I've had my lawyers digging into his past. The results are illuminating. Tell me. His first wife died in a car accident 3 years into their marriage. She was 24. Dante's voice was flat, reciting facts. His second wife fell down the stairs after 5 years. She was 28. Both women were sole heirs to considerable fortunes. Both fortunes transferred to Victor upon their deaths. Nausea rolled through my stomach. He killed them. Nothing was ever proven. Victor is very careful. Dante turned to face me, his expression hard. But yes, I believe he killed them. And I believe he intends to do the same to you once he's secured your inheritance. Confirmation of what I'd suspected shouldn't have shocked me. But hearing it spoken aloud in Dante's cold, certain voice made it terrifyingly real. So what do? We continue the performance. We get married as planned, secure your inheritance, and remove Victor's leverage. His eyes held mine. And in the meantime, I will be working to ensure Victor Ashford is no longer a threat to anyone. What does that mean? It means you should focus on playing your role and let me handle the rest. I stepped closer to him, refusing to be dismissed. I told you from the beginning I won't walk blindly into danger. If you're planning something that involves me, I have a right to know. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. Or grudging respect. You're remarkably stubborn. I'm remarkably tired of being kept in the dark by powerful men who think they know what's best for me. A smile flickered across his lips, there and gone. Fair enough. He gestured toward the couch. Sit. I'll tell you what you want to know. We sat facing each other, close enough that our knees almost touched. In the firelight, Dante looked less like a crime lord and more like a man carrying weights no one else could see. Victor's legitimate businesses are fronts, he began. Real estate development, import-export, charitable foundations. All of them are used to launder money from his actual enterprises. Which are human trafficking primarily. Moving people across borders for various purposes, none of them pleasant. Dante's voice hardened. He also deals in information. Blackmail material on politicians, judges, business leaders. It's how he's stayed untouchable for so long. My stomach turned. The man who'd sat across from me in my father's study, who'd touched my face and promised to make me his wife, was a monster on a scale I'd barely imagined. Did my father know? I don't know. They were business partners for over a decade. It's possible Thomas Thornton was complicit in Victor's operations. Dante's eyes held mine, unflinching. It's also possible he discovered the truth and tried to distance himself, which might explain why Victor is so determined to control his legacy. You think Victor killed my father? The official cause of death was a heart attack. Dante shrugged. But Victor has access to substances that can induce cardiac arrest without leaving traces. It would fit his pattern. I pressed my hands against my face, trying to process the enormity of what I was hearing. My absent, distant father, possibly murdered by the man who now hunted me. My inheritance, built on foundations I'd never questioned, possibly tainted by horrors I couldn't fathom. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. Dante's voice softened slightly. And because you deserve to understand what you're caught in the middle of. How do I know you're any different? Question emerged before I could stop it. You're a criminal too. Everyone knows the Salvatore family isn't exactly legitimate. No, we're not. He didn't flinch from the accusation. I run gambling operations, some narcotics distribution, protection services for businesses the police ignore. I've ordered men killed who threatened my family or broke our codes. His eyes held mine, brutally honest. But there are lines I don't cross. I don't traffic people. I don't deal in children. I don't destroy innocents for profit. Just guilty ones. Everyone who works for me chose this life. Everyone who dies by my order earned that death. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from every line of his body. I'm not a good man, Belle. I've never claimed to be. But I'm not Victor Ashford. And I will burn his empire to the ground before I let him touch you. The fierceness in his voice stole my breath. This wasn't performance. This wasn't the smooth charm he displayed for cameras and society matrons. This was something raw and real, something that made my heart race in ways I didn't want to examine. Why? I whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? For a long moment, he didn't answer. The fire crackled between us, shadows dancing across his sharp features. I don't know, he finally admitted. When you grabbed my arm at that gala, when you looked at me with those desperate, defiant eyes and dared to use me as a shield against your enemy, something shifted. His hand rose, hovering near my face without touching. You intrigued me. And I am very rarely intrigued. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His fingers finally made contact, tracing the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness. For now. I should have pulled away. Should have retreated to the safety of our contractual boundaries, the clearly defined roles of fake fiancé and convenient husband. Instead, I leaned into his touch. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't say my name like that unless you mean it. Like what? Like you want me to kiss you? My heart stopped. Started again at twice its normal speed. Maybe I do. His eyes darkened, desire and warning warring in their depths. This wasn't part of our agreement. Agreements can be renegotiated. For one endless moment, we hovered on the edge of something neither of us had planned. I could feel the tension in his body, the effort it took him to hold back. Could see the moment his control began to crack, then his phone rang, the sound shattered the spell between us. Dante pulled back, his expression shuddering as he glanced at the screen. I have to take this. He stood, putting distance between us with obvious deliberation. We'll continue this conversation later. He was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with my racing pulse and the echo of almost. I pressed my fingers to my lips, still feeling the ghost of a kiss that never happened. What was I doing? This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a fake engagement to escape a real threat. Catching feelings for Dante Salvatore was not part of the plan, but as Mrs. Russo appeared with tea and gentle questions about dinner preferences, I realized something terrifying. The act was becoming real, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop. 3 days later, Dante announced we would be attending his sister's birthday party. Sister. I looked up from the breakfast table, surprised. I didn't know you had a sister. Gianna. She's 28, runs our family's charitable foundation, and has been demanding to meet you since the engagement was announced. A hint of warmth crept into his voice when he spoke of her. She's also the only person in the world who can make me do things I don't want to do. She sounds formidable. She's terrifying. But he smiled when he said it, a real smile that transformed his face. And she will see through our act in approximately 30 seconds, so you should be prepared. You're going to tell her the truth. Gianna already knows. She knows everything about my life, including the parts one wished she didn't. He set down his coffee cup. She's agreed to keep our secret, but she wanted to meet you anyway. To make sure I'm not exploiting some poor woman for nefarious purposes. Her words. I found myself smiling despite my nerves. I think I'm going to like your sister. Everyone likes Gianna. It's extremely annoying. Party was held at a townhouse in the Upper East Side, a beautiful brownstone that felt more like a home than Dante's sterile penthouse. Gianna met us at the door, a whirlwind of dark curls and bright eyes that sparkled with mischievous intelligence. So you're the woman who's turned my brother inside out. She pulled me into a hug before I could react. Welcome to the family, fake or not. Gianna. Dante's voice carried a warning. Oh, relax. No one can hear us. She looped her arm through mine, leading me away from Dante. Come. Let me introduce you to everyone while my brother sulks in the corner. I don't sulk. You absolutely sulk. You've been sulking since 1987. I couldn't help laughing at the sibling bickering, so normal and human compared to the dangerous world I'd stumbled into. Gianna introduced me to aunts and uncles, cousins and family friends, all of whom welcomed me with warmth that seemed genuine despite knowing nothing about our arrangement. They're good people, Gianna said quietly as we stood by the refreshment table. My brother has done terrible things to protect them. To protect me. Whatever you think you know about Dante Salvatore, there's more beneath the surface. I'm beginning to realize that. Good. Gianna's eyes sharpened. Because he cares about you. Really cares, not just the act. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. We've only known each other a week. Time doesn't matter. Connection does. She squeezed my hand. Just be careful with him. He's been alone for so long. If you break his heart, fake marriage or not, I will destroy you. The threat was delivered with a sweet smile, but I didn't doubt her sincerity for a moment. I'll be careful, I promised. Across the room, Dante caught my eye. He raised his glass slightly, a silent question. I smiled back and realized with terrifying clarity that I was falling for my fake fiancé. 2 weeks before our wedding, Victor made his move. I was returning from a fitting for my wedding dress, a stunning Vera Wang creation that Dante had insisted on despite my protests about the expense. The car had just pulled up to the penthouse when Nico's phone rang. His expression changed instantly. Get her inside. Now. Before I could ask what was happening, 2 more security guards materialized, flanking me as they rushed me through the lobby and into the private elevator. The doors closed, and I found myself surrounded by tense men with hands hovering near concealed weapons. What's going on? Security breach at one of Mr. Salvatore's properties. Nico's voice was clipped. We're on lockdown until further notice. Penthouse was in chaos when we arrived. Men I'd never seen before moved through the space with military precision, checking windows and securing exits. Mrs. Russo stood in the kitchen doorway, her face pale but composed. Where's Dante? On his way. Nico guided me toward the interior rooms. You'll wait in the safe room until he arrives. Safe room. He didn't answer, just led me down a hallway I'd never explored and pressed his palm against a panel that looked like ordinary wall. A door slid open, revealing a space that looked like something from a spy movie. Reinforced walls, multiple screens showing security feeds, enough supplies to last weeks. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except Mr. Salvatore or myself. Then he was gone, and I was alone with my fear. The minutes stretched into hours. I watched the security feeds obsessively, seeing men patrol the penthouse, seeing the city continue its business far below, seeing nothing that explained what had happened. When the door finally opened, I nearly collapsed with relief. Dante stood in the doorway, his suit rumpled, a cut above his eyebrow seeping blood. But he was alive. He was here. Belle. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into his arms. I went willingly, pressing my face against his chest, feeling his heart pound against my cheek. He held me like I was something precious, something he'd been afraid of losing. What happened? I asked when I could finally speak. Victor. The name came out like a curse. He had one of my warehouses bombed. 3 of my men were injured. His arms tightened around me. And he left a message. For you. He released me just enough to pull a crumpled paper from his pocket. I took it with trembling fingers. Did you really think a Salvatore could protect you? The wedding won't happen. You belong to me. Always. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. He's never going to stop. No. Dante's voice was hard as steel. He won't. Then what do we do? He cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. We get married. Tomorrow. Tomorrow? But the plans, the guests, can be adjusted. Victor expects us to delay, to cower, to give him time to plan his next attack. His jaw tightened. We won't give him that satisfaction. By this time tomorrow, you'll be my wife. Legally, irrevocably. And then we'll see how brave Victor Ashford feels when he's facing the full weight of the Salvatore family. Dante, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling you. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. I made you a promise the night we met. I said I would keep you safe. I intend to keep that promise. This is more than you signed up for. The bombs, threats, all of this is exactly what I expected when I agreed to this arrangement. His eyes held mine, fierce and unwavering. Victor Ashford has been a cancer in this city for too long. Using you as an excuse to finally cut him out is a bonus, not a burden. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he didn't owe me anything, that I should disappear and handle Victor on my own, but I was so tired of being alone. So tired of running. "Okay," I whispered. Tomorrow. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps. Or something deeper. There's something else. His hands fell away from my face and he took a step back. Before we do this, you should know things have changed. For me. My heart stuttered. Changed how? This was supposed to be a business arrangement. A mutually beneficial transaction. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare display of agitation. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. Don, I told you once that the act ends when I say it ends. His eyes found mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I don't want it to end, Belle. Not ever. Confession hung between us, raw and honest. I thought about all the moments that had led to this. The almost kiss by the fire. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. The fierce protectiveness that went beyond contractual obligation. I'm falling in love with you, he continued, the words seeming to cost him. I know that wasn't the deal. I know you didn't sign up for this. If you want to maintain our original arrangement, I'll respect that. But I can't marry you tomorrow without telling you the truth. I closed the distance between us, reaching up to touch his face the way he'd touched mine so many times. His eyes closed briefly at the contact. I stopped pretending weeks ago, I admitted. I just didn't know how to tell you. His eyes flew open. Belle, I love you, Dante. Not because you're protecting me from Victor. Not because of the contract or the penthouse or any of it. I smiled through the tears streaming down my face. I love you because you read legal documents allowed to annoy your sister. Because you pretend not to care when Mrs. Russo scolds you about skipping meals. Because you look at me like I'm the only person in the room, even when we're surrounded by hundreds. He kissed me before I could say another word. This wasn't the almost kiss from before. This was fire and tenderness, possession and promise. His arms wrapped around me like he'd never let go, and I melted into him, finally allowing myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Marry me, he murmured. Not because of Victor or the inheritance or any arrangement. Marry me because you want to. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Yes. The word came easily, naturally, the truest thing I'd ever said. Yes, I'll marry you. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the city. Real and warm and just for me. Then let's go tell Mrs. Russo she has a wedding to plan by morning. The wedding was nothing like the elaborate affair we'd originally planned. Instead of 500 guests at the plaza, there were 30 people in Gianna's townhouse. Instead of a 12-piece orchestra, there was a single violinist playing softly in the corner. Instead of the Vera Wang gown, I wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Russo had somehow conjured from thin air. She was perfect. Gianna stood as my maid of honor. Having known me for barely 2 weeks but already feeling like the sister I'd never had. Nico served as best man, his usual stoic expression cracking into something approaching a smile as he watched his boss fidget at the altar. And Dante looked at me like I was a miracle he couldn't quite believe. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. We'd written our own vows, words that started as performance and became truth somewhere along the way. I promise to protect you, Dante said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Not because you're weak, but because you're precious. I promise to stand beside you, not in front of you. To be your partner, not your keeper. And I promise that whatever darkness the world throws at us, we'll face it together. My turn. I took a breath, steadying myself. I promise to see you, I said. Not the reputation or the rumors, but the man beneath. I promise to challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. To be your sanctuary when the world is too much and your strength when you forget your own. I squeezed his hands. And I promise that the act is over. This is real. Forever. Kiss that sealed our vows felt like coming home. Afterward, there was champagne and laughter and congratulations from people who genuinely seemed happy for us. Gianna cried. Mrs. Russo cried harder. Even Nico looked suspiciously misty-eyed, though he denied it when I pointed it out. But as the evening wore on, I noticed Dante growing increasingly tense. His eyes kept moving to his phone, his jaw tightening each time it buzzed. What is it? I asked quietly, pulling him aside. Victor. His voice was grim. He's made another move. Tried to file an injunction to stop our marriage, claiming fraud and coercion. My blood ran cold. Can he do that? He can try. My lawyers are handling it. Dante's hand found mine, squeezing reassuringly. It won't work. We're legally married now. Nothing he does can change that. But he's not going to stop. No. Dante's expression hardened into something dangerous. Which is why it's time I stopped waiting for him to make the next move. What are you going to do? He was quiet for a moment, weighing how much to tell me. I waited, refusing to let him shut me out. Victor's power comes from his blackmail material, he finally said. Information he's collected over decades on politicians, judges, law enforcement. Without it, he's just another criminal with too much money and not enough protection. And you know where this information is? I know someone who does. His eyes met mine. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation with one of Victor's former associates. By the end of the week, Victor Ashford will have nothing left to threaten anyone with. Is it dangerous? Everything I do is dangerous. He lifted my hand to his lips. But I have something to come home to now. That changes the calculation. I wanted to argue, to tell him to let the lawyers handle it to stay safe. But I'd married Dante Salvatore with full knowledge of who he was. I couldn't ask him to be someone else now. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me. And when it's over, when Victor is dealt with and your inheritance is secure, I'm taking you somewhere far from all of this. Somewhere we can just be us, without the threats and the performances. That sounds perfect. It will be. He kissed my forehead. I love you, Mrs. Salvatore. The name sent a thrill through me. I love you too. Sighed, the city glittered with indifferent beauty. Somewhere out there, Victor Ashford was plotting his next move, but in here, in my husband's arms, surrounded by people who'd become family, I felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. Safe, whatever came next, we would face it together. The days following our wedding were a strange blend of newlywed bliss and mounting tension. By day, Dante and I explored the unfamiliar territory of genuine intimacy, learning each other's rhythms and habits with the careful attention of people who'd started with a contract and ended with love.by night. He disappeared into meetings I wasn't invited to, returning in the small hours with shadows under his eyes and tension carved into every line of his body. I didn't ask questions. I'd made my peace with who my husband was. But that didn't stop me from worrying every time he walked out the door. You're going to wear a hole in that carpet. I turned to find Gianna watching me from the living room doorway, 2 glasses of wine in her hands. Sorry. I forced myself to stop pacing. I just hate waiting. Welcome to being a Salvatore woman. She handed me a glass and settled onto the couch, patting the cushion beside her. Our men do dangerous things, and we drink expensive wine and pretend we're not terrified. Does it ever get easier? No. Gianna's smile was sad. But you learn to trust them, to believe they'll come back to you. I sank onto the couch, taking a long sip of wine. He's been so tense lately. Whatever he's planning with Victor, it's big. It has to be. Victor Ashford has survived this long because he's careful and connected. Gianna's expression hardened. But he made a mistake when he threatened you. Dante would burn the world down to protect what's his. That's what worries me. Before Gianna could respond, the elevator doors opened. Dante strode in, followed by Nico and 2 men I didn't recognize. His expression was grim, but there was something else beneath it. Satisfaction. It's done. He crossed to me, pulling me up from the couch and into his arms. Victor's leverage is gone. What do you mean? His blackmail material. Every file, every photo, every recording he's used to control people for the past 20 years. Dante's smile was sharp as a blade. All of it is now in my possession. Gianna let out a low whistle. How? His former head of security had a crisis of conscience. Dante released me but kept my hand in his. Apparently, watching Victor plan to murder another young wife was a step too far. The casual mention of murder sent a chill through me. So what happens now? Now, Victor discovers that all his friends are suddenly unavailable. That the judges he owns won't return his calls. That the politicians in his pocket are very interested in distancing themselves. Dante's eyes glittered with dark amusement. By tomorrow, Victor Ashford will be the most isolated man in New York. And then we wait. A cornered animal is dangerous, but also predictable. His grip on my hand tightened. He'll come for you, Belle. It's the only move he has left. You're using me as bait. I'm giving him enough rope to hang himself. Dante cupped my face in his hands. You'll be protected every moment. An army of my best men. But yes, Victor needs to believe he has a chance at getting to you, or he'll go to ground and we'll be looking over our shoulders for years. I should have been afraid. Should have protested, demanded he find another way. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settle over me. Victor had threatened me, hunted me, tried to destroy everything I cared about. It was time to end this. When? Something like pride flickered in Dante's eyes. The inheritance hearing is in 3 days. Victor's last legal avenue to challenge our marriage and claim your father's estate. He'll have to show up in person. And you'll be waiting. We'll be waiting. He pressed his forehead to mine. Together. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Dante's security team transformed the penthouse into a fortress. Additional guards were stationed at every entrance. Surveillance equipment monitored every approach. Even Mrs. Russo was given a panic button and instructions on how to reach the safe room. I spent the time reviewing the inheritance documents with Dante's lawyers, making sure every I was dotted and every T crossed. My father's estate was substantial, far more than I'd realized. Properties across 3 countries, investment portfolios worth hundreds of millions, and a controlling interest in a pharmaceutical company that Victor had been quietly stripping of assets for years. He's been stealing from you since your father's death, the lead attorney explained, spreading financial documents across the conference table. Using his position as executor to divert funds into shell companies. Our estimate is approximately $60 million. $60 million. The number was almost incomprehensible. Can we prove it? With the records we've obtained, yes. Victor Ashford is facing not just the loss of your inheritance, but criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and quite possibly murder. I looked at Dante, who sat at the head of the table with the quiet confidence of a man who'd already won. The hearing isn't just about the money anymore, he said. It's about exposing everything Victor has done. The judge presiding has been presented with evidence of Victor's blackmail operation. She's very motivated to ensure justice is served. Because she was one of his victims? Because her daughter was. Dante's jaw tightened. Victor's reach extended further than anyone realized. Half the people in this city have reason to want him destroyed. We've simply given them the opportunity. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the bedroom window, watching the city lights blur through the glass, when Dante's arms wrapped around me from behind. You should be resting. So should you. He pressed a kiss to my temple. I've faced worse than Victor Ashford. Have you? I turned in his arms. He's desperate now. Desperate men do terrible things. Yes, they do. His eyes held mine, steady and sure. But desperate men also make mistakes. Victor's made his last one. How can you be so certain? Because he underestimated you. His hand rose to cup my cheek. He saw a frightened girl he could bully into submission. He didn't see the woman who would walk into a room full of strangers and claim a crime lord as her fiancé, who would sign a contract with the devil to escape a monster, who would stand beside her husband and face down her demons rather than run. I was terrified every moment. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. He smiled, soft and genuine. You're the bravest person I know, Bel Salvatore. The name still sent a thrill through me. I love you. I love you too. He kissed me slowly, thoroughly, with all the passion he usually kept contained. Now come to bed. Tomorrow we end this. Courthouse steps were crowded with reporters who'd caught wind that something significant was happening. Cameras flashed as our car pulled up, capturing the moment Dante helped me out, his hand firmly clasped around mine. We walked through the gauntlet together, flanked by lawyers and security, projecting the image of a united front. Inside, the marble halls echoed with footsteps and whispered speculation. Victor was already in the courtroom when we arrived. He looked diminished somehow, his usually impeccable suit wrinkled, his silver hair less perfectly styled. But his eyes, when they found me, still burned with the obsessive fury I remembered. Isabel. He spoke my name like a curse. I see you've brought your trained dog. Dante's grip on my hand tightened, but his expression remained calm. Victor. You look tired. Trouble sleeping. Enjoy your moment, Salvatore. It won't last. I think it will. Dante guided me to our seats. In fact, I think this particular moment will last for the rest of your very short freedom. The hearing began with a recitation of facts that painted Victor's crimes in stark detail. His embezzlement from my father's estate. His manipulation of the will. His pattern of marrying wealthy women who conveniently died. Victor's attorney objected repeatedly, but the judge, a stern woman with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, overruled each one with obvious satisfaction. The evidence presented clearly demonstrates that Mr. Ashford has engaged in systematic fraud against the Thornton estate, she announced, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom. Furthermore, this court has been presented with additional evidence of criminal activity that will be referred to the appropriate authorities. Victor shot to his feet. This is a farce. Salvatore has orchestrated this entire— Sit down, Mr. Ashford. The judge's voice could have frozen fire. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Victor's lawyer pulled him back into his seat, but I could see the rage building in him. The desperation. The knowledge that everything he'd built was crumbling around him. The judge continued, ruling in our favor on every point. The inheritance was mine, free and clear. Victor's claim was denied. His position as executor was terminated. And at the end, she recommended that criminal charges be filed immediately. Furthermore, she concluded, given the serious nature of the allegations and Mr. Ashford's extensive resources, I am ordering him held without bail pending investigation. No. Victor lunged to his feet again, but this time he wasn't heading for the judge. He was heading for me. Everything happened in seconds. Victor's hand disappeared into his jacket, emerging with a gun that glinted under the fluorescent lights. Guards shouted. People screamed. And Dante moved, putting himself between me and the weapon. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. I watched in horror as Dante staggered, a red stain blooming across his white shirt. He didn't fall, didn't even cry out. Just turned to face Victor with murder in his eyes. Wrong move, he said, his voice steady despite the blood. Nico materialized behind Victor, disarming him with brutal efficiency. Court security swarmed, taking Victor to the ground. And through it all, Dante stood like a wall between me and danger. Dante. I grabbed his arm, my hands immediately slicked with blood. You're hit. It's nothing. But his face had gone pale and he swayed slightly. Just a graze. That's not a graze. I pressed my hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. We need an ambulance. Now. The next hours blurred together. Paramedics. Hospital. Surgery to remove the bullet that had lodged dangerously close to Dante's heart. Waiting rooms that smelled of antiseptic and fear. Gianna found me in the surgical waiting room, still wearing my blood-stained clothes. He's out of surgery. She pulled me into a fierce hug. He's going to be fine. The relief was so intense I nearly collapsed. And Victor? In custody. Federal marshals took him directly to a maximum security holding facility. Gianna's smile was savage. He's finished, Belle. It's over. Over. The word didn't feel real, but when they finally let me see Dante, lying pale against white hospital sheets with monitors beeping steady reassurance, I let myself believe it. You're an idiot, I told him, tears streaming down my face. You could have died. Worth it. His voice was rough from the anesthesia, but his hand found mine with unerring accuracy. You're safe now. I was supposed to be the bait, not you. Plans change. He squeezed my fingers weakly. Victor's finished. Your inheritance is secure. We won. We almost lost everything. But we didn't. His eyes found mine, still sharp despite the drugs. We didn't. I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. A ghost of his usual smile crossed his lips. You're worth taking a bullet for, Belle Salvatore. Worth taking 100. One was more than enough. Noted. His eyes drifted closed. Stay with me. Always. I settled into the chair beside his bed, his hands still clasped in mine, and watched him sleep. It was over. Victor was gone. We were safe and we were together. That was all that mattered. Recovery, I learned, was not a linear process. Dante spent 2 weeks in the hospital, fighting off infection and driving the nursing staff to the edge of madness with his constant attempts to work from his bed. I divided my time between his bedside and the mountain of legal proceedings that Victor's arrest had triggered. The federal investigation uncovered horrors beyond what we'd imagined. Decades of blackmail, corruption, and at least 4 murders that could be definitively linked to Victor Ashford. His victims came forward one by one, emboldened by his downfall, painting a picture of a monster who'd operated in plain sight for far too long. My father, it turned out, had been one of them. The evidence suggests Thomas Thornton discovered Victor's human trafficking operation approximately 18 months before his death, the lead investigator told me during one of many meetings. He'd been quietly gathering evidence, planning to go to the authorities. And Victor found out. Yes, the clause in the will, the one giving Victor control of your inheritance, it was added 3 weeks before your father's heart attack. She paused. We believe Victor poisoned him, then manipulated the estate documents to ensure he could eventually claim everything through you. I should have felt grief. Recovery, I learned, was not a linear process. Dante spent 2 weeks in the hospital, fighting off infection and driving the nursing staff to the edge of madness with his constant attempts to work from his bed. I divided my time between his bedside and the mountain of legal proceedings that Victor's arrest had triggered. The federal investigation uncovered horrors beyond what we'd imagined. Decades of blackmail, corruption, and at least 4 murders that could be definitively linked to Victor Ashford. Should have mourned the father I'd barely known. Instead, I felt a strange peace. Thomas Thornton, for all his faults, had died trying to do the right thing. That was something. What happens to Victor now? Federal charges for racketeering, fraud, money laundering, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree. The investigator smiled grimly. He'll spend the rest of his life in a maximum security prison. Multiple life sentences, no possibility of parole. It wasn't death. Part of me had wanted death. But there was a certain justice in Victor Ashford, who'd built his empire on power and control, spending his remaining years in a cell where he controlled nothing. It's over, I told Dante that evening, curled beside him in his hospital bed despite the nurses' protests. Victor got multiple life sentences. He'll never hurt anyone again. Good. His arm tightened around me. Though I would have preferred a more permanent solution. This is better. He has to live with his failure. With knowing everything he built has been destroyed. My wife, the philosopher. He pressed a kiss to my hair. When did you become so wise? When I married a man who taught me that power isn't about destruction. It's about protection. Dante was quiet for a moment. I'm not sure I taught you that. You did. Every day in 1,000 small ways. I lifted my head to meet his eyes. The way you protect your family. The way you protected me. Even the way you run your business, there are lines you don't cross, people you don't hurt. You could be so much worse than you are, Dante. But you choose not to be. You give me too much credit. I give you exactly the credit you deserve. Kissed him softly. My husband, the secret softy. Tell anyone and I'll deny it. Your secret is safe with me. Spring arrived with the promise of new beginnings. Dante's recovery was complete, the scar on his chest a permanent reminder of the bullet he'd taken for me. We'd settled into something that felt remarkably normal, considering how abnormally our relationship had begun. Mornings started with coffee on the terrace, watching the city wake up far below. Days were filled with the business of building our life together. Dante had begun transitioning some of his less legitimate operations, moving toward a future that wouldn't require constant vigilance. I'd taken over management of my father's pharmaceutical company, determined to transform it into something that actually helped people. Evenings belonged to us. Dinners with Gianna and her new boyfriend, a mild-mannered accountant who seemed perpetually terrified of his girlfriend's family but clearly adored her. Weekly visits to Mrs. Russo's apartment in Brooklyn, where she'd retired after decades of service but still insisted on cooking enough food to feed an army. Quiet nights at home, tangled together on the couch, discovering that the passion between us only grew stronger with familiarity. Tea was on one such evening, 6 months after our courthouse wedding, that Dante made his announcement. "I have something for you." I looked up from the book I'd been reading, finding him standing before me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Nervous almost. Which was ridiculous, because Dante Salvatore didn't do nervous. "What is it?" He held out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "Dante, we're already married." "I'm aware." He sank onto the couch beside me, opening the box to reveal a ring that stole my breath. A central diamond surrounded by smaller emeralds, set in a band of platinum so delicate it looked like lacework. "But you never got a proper proposal. Or a proper ring. Our entire relationship began with a lie and a contract, and I've always regretted that." "I don't regret anything." "Neither do I. But that doesn't mean I can't do better." He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Isabel Salvatore, 6 months ago you pretended to be my fiancé to escape a dangerous man. You agreed to a fake marriage with a real criminal, knowing full well what you were getting into. You stood beside me through threats and violence and a bullet that should have killed me." "Dante, let me finish." His eyes held mine, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. "I fell in love with you somewhere between that first dance and our first real kiss. I've fallen deeper every day since. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what that love means. You already do. Every day. Then let me do it officially." He slipped the ring onto my finger, where it nestled against the simple gold band we'd exchanged at our rushed wedding. "Marry me again, Belle. Not because of contracts or arrangements or threats. Just because you love me." Tears blurred my vision. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He kissed me then, deep and thorough, with all the passion we'd discovered and all the promise of years to come. "I have one more surprise," he murmured against my lips. "I'm not sure my heart can take another one." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "This one's less romantic, but equally important. I've been working with my lawyers on something. The last of Victor's assets have been liquidated, and a portion of the proceeds have been used to establish a foundation." "What kind of foundation?" "A shelter for women escaping domestic violence. Named after your mother." My breath caught. My mother, who died when I was 3, whose face I knew only from photographs. My mother, who I'd always wondered about but never had the chance to know. "How did you?" Gianna helped me research. "Your mother was a social worker before she married your father. She spent years helping women escape abusive situations." Dante's thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. It seemed fitting that her legacy should continue. I couldn't speak. I could only throw my arms around him and hold on as if he were the only solid thing in a world suddenly overwhelming with emotion. "Thank you," I finally managed. "Thank you for giving me this. Thank you for giving me everything." He pulled back to look at me, his eyes bright with emotion he rarely showed. "You saved me, Belle. I was existing before you. Going through the motions, building an empire I didn't care about, pushing away everyone who tried to get close. You changed that. You changed everything. We saved each other. Then let's keep saving each other. Every day for the rest of our lives. Deal." Our second wedding was everything the first hadn't been. We exchanged vows at sunset on the beach in Positano, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Gianna stood beside me again, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief she'd sworn she wouldn't need. Nico stood beside Dante, his stoic expression cracking into something approaching joy as he watched his oldest friend finally find happiness. Mrs. Russo had insisted on catering, enlisting her entire extended family to prepare a feast that would be talked about for years. Tables were set with flowers from Gianna's garden. The music came from a local band that Dante had discovered during one of our trips to Italy. It was perfect. Not because it was expensive or elaborate, but because it was ours. I never thought I'd have this, I admitted as Dante and I swayed together in our first dance as officially renewed husband and wife. A real family. People who love me. A future I actually want to live. And now I can't imagine any other life. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. You gave me this, Dante. All of it. You gave it to yourself. I just provided the opportunity. His arms tightened around me. You're the strongest person I know, Belle. You would have survived without me. Maybe. But I wouldn't have lived. I looked up at him, memorizing the way the sunset painted his features in shades of gold. There's a difference. Yes. He smiled, that rare, genuine expression that was reserved only for me. There is. The reception continued long into the night. There was laughter and dancing and far too much wine. Gianna gave a toast that had everyone in tears. Nico gave one that had everyone in stitches, revealing stories about Dante that his boss had clearly hoped would stay buried, and through it all, Dante kept me close, his hand on my waist, his eyes finding mine across the crowd. His lips brushing my temple in moments of quiet intimacy. Just the last guests departed and the stars emerged over the Mediterranean, we stood together on the terrace of our rented villa, looking out at the sea. Happy? Dante asked, his arms wrapped around me from behind. Deliriously. Good. He pressed a kiss to my neck. I have one more surprise. Dante, you've already given me more than I ever dreamed of. Then one more won't hurt. He turned me to face him, his expression suddenly serious. I've made a decision. About the business. What kind of decision? I'm stepping back. Not entirely, not immediately, but over the next few years, I'm transitioning control to people I trust. His eyes held mine. I want to be the kind of man who deserves you, Belle. Kind of husband you can be proud of. The kind of father our children can look up to. My heart stuttered. Children? If you want them. Vulnerability flickered across his features. I never thought I would. Never believed I could be a decent father given my own. But you've shown me that we don't have to repeat the patterns we inherited. We can choose differently. Dante. I cupped his face in my hands. I would love to have children with you. A whole house full if you want. Let's start with one and see how it goes. I laughed, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. Deal. He kissed me under the stars, with the sound of waves crashing below and the whole future stretching out before us. 1 year later, I stood in that same spot, watching Dante chase our daughter across the sand. Sophia Lucia Salvatore had arrived screaming into the world 9 months after our second wedding, with her father's dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. She had wrapped Dante around her tiny finger within seconds of her first breath, and he'd been completely lost ever since. She's going to be a terror, Gianna observed, settling into the chair beside me with a glass of wine. Just like her father. I prefer to think of it as spirited. You would. But Gianna was smiling, her eyes soft as she watched her brother tumble in the sand with his daughter. I've never seen him this happy. Neither have I. And it was true. The Dante who lifted Sophia onto his shoulders, who made ridiculous faces to coax out her giggles, who looked at me like I'd hung the moon every time our eyes met, he was a different man from the cold crime lord I'd grabbed at a gala 2 years ago. He was still dangerous. Still powerful. Still capable of terrible things when the situation demanded, but he was also kind and loving. And mindless of sensing my thoughts, Dante looked up, meeting my gaze across the beach. He smiled, that genuine expression that still made my heart skip, and mouthed 3 words, "I love you, I love you too," I mouthed back. Sophia squealed with delight as Dante swung her around, and I felt tears prick my eyes. Not from sadness, but from an overwhelming gratitude for everything that had led me here. I'd walked into that gala terrified and alone, hunted by a monster I couldn't escape. I'd grabbed a stranger's arm and told a lie that changed everything. The act was supposed to end when he said it ended. Instead, it had become the most real thing in my life, and as I watched my husband carry our daughter toward me, his face bright with joy and love and everything I'd never dared to hope for, I knew that this was just the beginning. The best stories, after all, don't end with happily ever after, they begin there. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed She Pretended to Be His Wife to Escape a Dangerous Man, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. Your